I used to love living alone. There's a certain peace to it. The quiet, the freedom, the solitude. No one asking questions, no unexpected noise. For the first time in years, I had space to breathe. But if there's one thing I learned from what happened last winter, it's that too much quiet can make you start hearing things that aren't there. And sometimes, they are there. It started when I moved into a small rental cabin on the edge of a forest in northern Washington. I'd just gone through a messy breakup and I wanted isolation. No neighbors, no city noise, no reminders of anyone. The place was perfect. Cheap rent, wide open surroundings, and a big picture window that overlooked the tree line. The cabin was small. 1 bedroom, a combined living room and kitchen, and a narrow hallway that led to a tiny bathroom. There was no Wi-Fi and barely any cell signal, which honestly sounded like heaven at the time. The landlord, an older guy named Henry, handed me the keys with a smile and a warning. "Don't leave food out," he said. "The raccoons out here are bold, and don't be surprised if you hear the woods talking at night. They echo weird out here." I thought he was joking. The first couple of weeks were peaceful. I'd work on my freelance projects during the day, take long walks through the woods in the evening, then read by the fire until I fell asleep. Sometimes I'd sit on the couch facing that big window and just stare out at the forest, the endless dark line of trees standing still, like sentinels. But around the 3rd week, I started feeling watched. It wasn't constant, just moments. Like I'd be reading and suddenly I'd feel a heavy awareness settle on me, a weight behind the glass. I'd look up and see nothing but trees. At first I shrugged it off as paranoia. When you spend days without human contact, your mind starts making its own company. Then, one night I woke up to tapping. It was faint, barely audible at first, a rhythmic tick-tick-tick coming from somewhere in the living room. I grabbed my phone to check the time, 2:47 a.m. I got up slowly, the floorboards creaking beneath my feet, and peered down the hall. The living room was dark except for the faint orange glow from the fireplace embers. Tap, tap, tap. It was coming from the window. I froze. The sound was steady and deliberate. I didn't move for what felt like minutes. Then, heart pounding, I took a few slow steps toward the window. The tapping stopped. I flicked on the lamp. Nothing. Just the reflection of my own scared face staring back at me in the glass. Outside, the trees swayed gently in the wind. I forced a laugh. Maybe a branch was brushing the window. Maybe the wind had thrown some loose debris against it. I checked the glass, nothing there. I went back to bed, pretending I wasn't still shaking. The next morning I stepped outside to check. There were no branches near the window, no signs of damage. But there were footprints, faint, but definitely human. They led from the tree line right up to the side of the cabin, directly below the window, then back into the woods. I told myself it was probably Henry checking the property. But deep down, I didn't believe that. That night, I pulled the curtains closed for the first time. I hadn't realized how exposed I'd been. That massive window was like a stage light at night, and anyone outside could see me perfectly. The next few nights passed without incident. No tapping, no footprints. I started to relax again. Then about a week later, it came back. This time, it wasn't tapping. It was a knock. 3 slow, heavy knocks on the glass. I bolted upright in bed, my skin crawling. I could hear the wind outside, soft and cold, but the knocks were different. They had weight. I grabbed the flashlight I kept by my bed and crept down the hallway. My hands were shaking so hard the beam wobbled across the walls. When I reached the living room, I hesitated. The curtains were closed, but I could feel someone on the other side. The air was heavy with it. For a second, I thought I saw a shadow move. The faintest silhouette behind the curtain, tall and still. Then, just as suddenly, it was gone. The next morning, I found new footprints in the snow outside. They weren't like before. These were deeper, as if someone had been standing there a long time. I called Henry, trying to keep my voice steady. He sounded concerned and said he'd drive up to check the locks and replace the motion light that had stopped working by the porch. He came by that afternoon, looked around and confirmed there were prints, big ones, like from heavy boots. But he also said something that made my stomach drop. The weird thing, he said, crouching by the window, is these prints don't walk up or away. It's like they just start here. He wasn't wrong. There were no approach tracks, just 2 perfect impressions side by side. pressed deep into the snow right in front of the window. That night, I barely slept. Every time the wind brushed against the cabin, I'd flinch. Around 3:30 a.m., I heard something new. Not outside this time, but from the kitchen. It was breathing, slow, deliberate, heavy breathing. I froze under the blanket, my heart hammering. The sound was faint, like someone standing just inside the room, inhaling through their mouth. I lay there for what felt like an eternity. When it finally stopped, I didn't move until the sky began to lighten. The next day, I installed a small camera by the window. I needed to know. I didn't care how crazy it sounded. I wanted proof. That night, I left the curtains closed again and kept the lights low. I fell asleep eventually, sheer exhaustion winning out over fear. The next morning, I checked the footage. The first few hours were normal, nothing but snow falling outside. Then, around 3:12 a.m., the motion sensor activated. The video showed the window. For a few seconds, there was nothing. Then, out of the dark, a shape moved forward, a tall man. He stood just beyond the glass, not moving. The angle caught only his reflection at first, but as he leaned closer, the details came into view. His skin was ashen, almost gray, and his eyes looked wrong, too wide, too fixed. He smiled, a slow, crooked grin, and pressed his forehead against the glass. Then he lifted his hand and tapped. Once, twice, 3 times. The camera froze for half a second, then cut to static. I dropped my phone. I called. Henry again, panicking. He came the next day and checked the property line, but there were no new footprints. The snow was untouched. He stayed quiet for a moment, then said, "You're not the first tenant to say they've seen someone by that window. Couple years back, the woman who lived here claimed she kept seeing a face in the reflection, said it smiled at her when she wasn't looking directly at it. I asked him what happened to her. He hesitated. She moved out suddenly, left all her things, never came back. After that, I couldn't relax. I kept the curtains shut all the time, covered the window with a sheet, even tried sleeping with earplugs. But the tapping came back, sometimes on the glass, sometimes from inside the wall, and sometimes from the ceiling. One night, I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I packed my bag, ready to leave first thing in the morning. But at exactly 3:07 a.m., I heard something new. My phone buzzed, a notification. Motion detected, living room camera. I almost didn't check, but I couldn't help it. My hands were trembling so hard I could barely unlock my phone. The live feed opened to show the window and the curtain moving from the inside. Someone was behind it. I didn't think. I just ran. Out the back door into the snow, barefoot. I didn't stop until I reached my car half a mile down the road. When I finally got to town, I called the police. They went up to the cabin that morning and found the place empty. Doors locked, no signs of forced entry. But when they reviewed the footage from my camera, the last frame before it cut out showed something I still can't explain. The curtain was pulled back and from the inside, and in the reflection of the glass, they said they could see me. Standing outside, except I wasn't there yet. The timestamp was from 2 minutes before I ran. I left everything behind. Henry didn't even ask for rent. He just said, "I'll take care of it," and hung up. A few weeks later, I checked the local news out of curiosity. A hiker had gone missing near the forest behind the cabin. The article mentioned that his abandoned car was found less than half a mile away, near my old driveway. They never found him. Sometimes, when I'm driving late at night, I catch my reflection in the window of my car and my chest tightens, because for a split second, I swear, the reflection smiles before I do. When I first moved into that basement apartment, I honestly thought I'd found a hidden gem. It was small but affordable, and surprisingly clean for being part of an old 1960s duplex. The landlord, a man in his 50s named Roger, seemed friendly enough. He mentioned that the upper unit had been vacant for a while because the last tenants left unexpectedly, but I didn't think much of it at the time. I was desperate for a cheap place, and this one was half the cost of anything else in town. The layout was simple: 1 bedroom, a living room, small kitchen, and a short hallway that led to a door connecting to the upper unit. The door was locked, of course, and Roger told me not to worry about it since it was sealed off after the last renters left. For the first few nights, I was fine. The place was quiet, almost too quiet, but I liked that. After years of living near traffic, I welcomed the silence. I worked late hours at a small grocery store, usually getting home after midnight. I'd make myself some food, watch a few YouTube videos, and head to bed around 2 a.m. But after the first week, the silence started to feel off, not peaceful, empty, like the kind of quiet you get before a storm, when the air feels heavier than it should. The first weird thing that happened was a sound, a faint, muffled thud coming from the wall behind my bed. It was about 3 in the morning and I was half asleep when I heard it. One soft, dull hit, like someone knocking from the other side. I sat up instantly, heart pounding, staring at the wall. I waited. Another thud. This time it was lower, slower, more like a dragging sound. I tried to tell myself it was the pipes or maybe a mouse in the walls. The building was old after all. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't random. The noise had rhythm, like it was responding to me being awake. The next morning, I asked Roger about it when I saw him out front. He brushed it off immediately. "Old house," he said. "The plumbing's weird in that section. You'll get used to it." So I tried to, but it didn't stop. Over the next few nights, the noises got louder and closer. Sometimes I'd hear faint scratching like nails scraping wood. Sometimes it sounded like whispering, though so soft I could never make out words. Once it sounded like something dragging along the floor above me, except no one lived upstairs. I started leaving the TV on while I slept just for background noise. It helped a little, until the night I heard the voice. It was around 3:15 a.m. I had just turned off the TV, trying to force myself to sleep, when I heard something faint, almost like someone calling from a distance. At first, I thought it was outside. My small basement windows faced the backyard, which was fenced and overgrown. I lay still, holding my breath, listening. Then it came again, a whisper, faint, slow, from the wall beside my bed. "Help me." I froze. My body went cold instantly. It was so quiet, so low that I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it. But then it came again, slightly louder this time. "Please, help me." Every muscle in my body tensed. I didn't move, didn't breathe. I just stared at the wall. The voice sounded desperate, weak, like someone trapped. But there was something else to it too, something that made my stomach twist. The tone wasn't normal. It was shaky and drawn out, the way someone might imitate a voice if they didn't quite understand how humans are supposed to sound. "Please, help me." That last time, the me dragged on longer than natural. I couldn't take it anymore. I jumped out of bed, grabbed my phone, and turned on the flashlight. I pressed my ear against the wall. Nothing. Silence. I barely slept that night. The next morning, I checked the wall carefully. It was solid drywall, painted a dull cream color. No vents, no cracks, nothing. I even tapped it in a few spots, and solid all the way through. That evening, I told Roger about what I'd heard. He looked uncomfortable, like he didn't want to talk about it. Finally, he sighed and said, "Yeah, you're not the first tenant to mention weird noises, but I had this place checked. There's nothing in the walls. Probably sound traveling through the pipes again." I wanted to believe him, but deep down I didn't. The voice wasn't pipes. That night, I tried something different. I set my phone to record audio while I slept. When I woke up, the first thing I did was check the file. It was over 7 hours long. I scrolled through quickly, skipping the quiet parts. For most of it, there was nothing but soft static and the hum of my fridge. But then around 3:12 a.m., something faint came through. A whisper. Faint, but clear. "Please help me." My stomach dropped. It wasn't my imagination. Then, a few seconds later, something else. A sound that made me want to throw up. A laugh. Low. Guttural. Not quite human. It lasted only a few seconds before cutting off. I deleted the file immediately. After that night, things escalated quickly. The knocking came every night, always around 3 a.m. Sometimes soft, sometimes violent enough to shake the picture frames on my wall. Once, the sound followed me into the living room, like whatever it was inside the walls was moving along with me. Then the voice started using my name. The first time it happened, I was lying in bed pretending to sleep, hoping it would stop. Then I heard it right behind my head through the plaster. "Ethan," I stopped breathing. My chest felt like it was collapsing. "Ethan, please, help me." It wasn't even trying to sound human anymore. The words stretched unnaturally, like someone dragging their tongue across broken glass. I couldn't take it. I jumped up, turned on every light in the apartment, and stayed up until sunrise, shaking. The next morning, I called Roger and told him I was moving out. He sounded genuinely concerned but didn't seem surprised. When I came upstairs to drop off the keys, he said something that still chills me. He looked at me for a long moment before saying, "You should know. I had that whole section of the wall sealed off years ago. There used to be an old access crawl space back there. When the last tenants moved out, we closed it up." I asked him why. He hesitated, then said, "Because someone went missing. A guy who used to live in your unit. We thought maybe he'd skipped town, but when we checked later, the inside of that crawl space had deep scratches all over the wood, like he'd been trying to get out." I just stared at him. He must have seen the look on my face because he quickly added, "It's just a story the maintenance guys told me. Don't worry about it," but I couldn't stop thinking about it. That night, my last night there, I stayed awake, sitting in the living room with every light on. I had all my stuff packed, ready to leave first thing in the morning. Around 2:57 a.m., the knocking started again. I froze. It came from the hallway this time, near the door that connected to the upper unit, the one that was supposed to be sealed. Tap. Tap, tap 3 times, slow. Then came the whisper, "Ethan." I could hear it clearly, and right through the wood, my entire body locked up. My mind screamed, "Don't move, don't answer," but I couldn't look away. The door handle twitched. Just once, and then the voice, clearer, louder, almost right against the door. "Let me out." I ran. I didn't grab my bags, didn't even turn off the lights. I just bolted up the stairs, out the front door, and into my car. I didn't go back the next morning. Roger texted me later saying I'd left the door open and he'd close it for me. I never replied. A few weeks later, curiosity got the better of me. I looked up the address online, just to see if anyone had moved in. I found a local post on a small town forum. Someone had asked if the basement unit of that duplex was still available. The most recent reply from a few days earlier said, "Don't rent it." The guy who lived there before said he heard voices in the walls. They found a sealed crawl space behind the bedroom last month. Empty, but all the wood was clawed to hell. I closed the page immediately. I haven't slept through the night since. Sometimes, when the house creaks or pipes shift in my new apartment, I swear I hear it again. Just faint enough that I can almost convince myself it's nothing. Then, every once in a while, right around 3:15 a.m., I'll hear it, a whisper, right behind the wall. "Ethan." It's been a little over 2 years since it happened, but I still can't sleep through the night without waking up in a panic. My therapist says I'm suffering from something called nighttime anxiety response, but honestly, that label doesn't make me feel any better. You can call it whatever you want. Trauma, paranoia, sleep disorder. But I know what I heard, what I saw. And the worst part is, I still don't have any answers. I don't even know how to explain it to myself. This all started when I was living alone for the first time. I had just gotten a small apartment in a quiet suburban neighborhood on the edge of town. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. I was working remote nights for a logistics company, so my schedule was weird. I usually started work around 7 p.m. and clocked out a little after 3 in the morning. Because of that, I'd often stay awake until sunrise before finally crashing into bed. That first week living there, I was weirdly content. I liked the quiet. I liked hearing nothing but the hum of my computer and the occasional car driving by. My apartment was on the second floor of a small complex, just 8 units total. The layout was simple: a small kitchen, living room, 1 bedroom, and a balcony that overlooked the parking lot. The balcony was my favorite part. I'd go out there around 2 or 3 a.m. to smoke or just stare at the empty streetlights. It was peaceful, until it wasn't. The first time something strange happened, it was around 3:45 in the morning. I had just logged off for the night and was cleaning up my desk when I heard a single knock on my door. Not loud, just a single clear tap-tap. At first I thought I imagined it. I froze and listened. Nothing. My apartment door had a peephole, but it was one of those cheap warped ones that distort everything into a fisheye blur. When I looked through it, all I could make out was the dim glow of the hallway light. No shadows, no movement. I figured maybe one of the neighbors had accidentally knocked the wrong door. People get turned around, especially at night. So I ignored it and went to bed, but then it happened again. The next night, at almost the exact same time, 3:43 a.m., I heard it again. One knock, then silence. I remember sitting up in bed, holding my breath. The air felt heavy, like the whole apartment was waiting for me to move. I glanced toward the door. My living room light was still on, casting a faint glow down the hallway. Tap, tap. This time it was louder, and definitely deliberate. I felt the adrenaline rush through me instantly. My body went cold and my chest tightened. I wasn't scared yet, just uneasy. Maybe some drunk neighbor again, I told myself. Maybe they were lost. I got out of bed quietly, not even sure why I was being so cautious, and tiptoed to the door. When I looked through the peephole this time, I swear to God, I saw movement. Just a faint flicker of something in the corner of my vision, like a shadow darting out of sight. I hesitated for a full minute, heart pounding, waiting for another knock, but none came. The next morning, I checked the hallway. Nothing was out of place. For the next few nights, everything was normal again. I convinced myself I had overreacted. I even laughed about it when I told my coworker about my mystery knocker. But a week later, I woke up to the sound again, not from the front door this time, but from the balcony. It was 4 a.m. when I heard the knock, not on the door but on the glass. My balcony door was a sliding one, and I had left the blinds half open that night. The sound was unmistakable. 2 firm taps on the glass followed by silence. I froze in bed, staring toward the thin strip of light between the blinds. My first thought was that maybe it was a bird or the wind, but then it came again. Tap, tap, slow, rhythmic, like someone waiting for me to respond. Every hair on my body stood on end. I didn't want to look. I wanted to stay under the blanket and pretend I hadn't heard it. But curiosities or fear got the better of me. I slowly sat up, heart hammering in my ears, and turned my head toward the window. The blinds were swaying slightly even though the balcony was enclosed. And then in the narrow gap between the slats I saw it, a pale outline. A face, just the suggestion of one. White skin, no features. Motionless. I don't even remember gasping. I just remember stumbling backward off the bed, slamming into the wall and grabbing my phone. I turned on the flashlight and aimed it toward the window, but by the time the light hit the blinds, the face was gone. I ran to the balcony door and yanked the blinds open. Nothing. Just the empty night and the dim yellow glow from the parking lot below. My balcony didn't have any easy access from the outside. You'd need to climb an entire floor from the ground or scale the railing from the neighboring unit, which was locked. It didn't make sense. I barely slept that night. Every noise made me flinch. Every shadow in the corners of the room felt alive. The next day, I asked my upstairs neighbor if she'd seen anything weird lately. She looked at me with wide eyes and said, "Oh my God, yes. Last week I heard someone knocking on my bedroom window at night." I thought I was dreaming. We both laughed it off, but her voice trembled a little when she said it. After that, I bought a small security camera from Amazon, one of those motion-activated ones you can monitor through your phone. I set it up facing my balcony door and tried to forget about the whole thing. A few nights later, around 3:50 a.m., my phone buzzed with a notification. Motion detected, balcony camera. I remember my hand shaking as I opened the app. The footage showed the balcony door dimly lit by the streetlight outside. For the first few seconds, there was nothing, just stillness. Then out of nowhere, something stepped into frame. It was a person, at least I think it was. They were completely still, standing just a few feet from the glass, facing the door. Their head tilted slightly to one side like they were listening. But what made my stomach twist was their face, or lack of one. It was blurred, even in the high-resolution footage. Not because of motion, it was like the camera couldn't focus on it. And then, right before the clip ended, they raised a hand and knocked twice on the glass. Tap, tap. The video cut out immediately after that. The motion detector had stopped recording. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I didn't even move. I just sat there staring at the door, waiting for it to happen again. The next morning, I went straight to the leasing office with my phone in hand. I showed the property manager the video, but for some reason, when I tried to play it again, it wouldn't load. The file was there, same timestamp, yeah, but it was corrupted. She gave me a concerned smile, said maybe it was a prank, and offered to send maintenance to check the locks. That was it. I was furious, terrified and exhausted. I started sleeping with all the lights on. I even moved my bed away from the balcony entirely. For about a week, everything was quiet again, and then it started knocking on the walls. I'm not exaggerating. It began with light taps in the corner of the room, just above where my head used to be when the bed was there. Sometimes it was on the opposite wall. Always 2 knocks, always in the same rhythm. It would happen when I was awake too. Once, while I was working, I heard the knocking coming from the kitchen wall. I ran over, heart racing, and pressed my ear against the plaster. Nothing. When I backed away, I noticed something else. 2 faint smudges, perfectly round, side by side, just above the baseboard. Like someone had touched the wall with dirty fingertips. That night, I packed a bag and went to stay with a friend across town. When I came back 2 days later to grab some stuff, I noticed something chilling. On my balcony door, right where the knocks had been, there were 2 oily handprints. Not just smudges this time, full handprints. Pale, almost translucent. I moved out the next morning. A few weeks later, after I'd settled into a new place, I got an email from my old landlord. They'd been doing routine inspections and noticed something unusual in my old unit. Attached to the email was a photo. It was my old bedroom wall, the same one where I'd first heard the knocking. The paint was peeling in 2 small circular spots side by side, almost like eyes. The message simply said, "Do you know what might have caused this?" I never replied. Now every once in a while, around 3:45 a.m., I wake up for no reason. I'll lie there staring into the dark, listening. And sometimes I swear I can still hear it. Tap, tap,